In this video we will be covering the following topics: defining device settings to lock down devices, setting up operators, creating operator dimensions, and finally the machine center setup. In the previous video we covered creating the default settings of SFDC. In the first part of this video we're going to look at making settings more specific per device. To do this, we need to complete setup within the Portal Framework Application Device Data screen. So as you can see, I'm currently in my role center. From here, I'm just going to navigate to the Portal Framework applications. And as we discussed in the previous video, this is where you want to create each of your devices. So once you've created a device, such as for example device 1, you can now choose to predefine the data loaded onto the output screen. In this example, I only want my device to show production orders related to Machine Center 130. So in my device type code, I've already got center set as a default. Then in data, I'm going to select Machine Center 130. And finally, we have the retain data field. So as you can see here, I have three options: blank, session or permanent. If I wanted to lock down the information that I've input, which in this case I do, I would select permanent. If I wanted the machine information to revert back to its defaults whenever a production order was completed, I'd select blank. Or if I wanted the information here to only stay during a user session, I would select session. So in this example, I'm just going to select permanent. Just a note on this screen, the data types that we can see here feed through from the data type setup screen that we completed in the previous video. So I'm just going to select OK. So now you can see I've loaded my SFDC. And if you watched the previous video, you remember that firstly I had to choose a machine center. However, now because I've set the machine center to Machine Center 130, that choice has been taken away from me, and I now have to select a production order line. So as you can see, this is helpful if you know that a device is only going to stay on one machine center. Also, just to show that this has worked, I'm just going to select the first production order line and next. And I'm going to select operator 20. And you can see that Machine Center 130 is shown in the top left corner. Now we need to move on to setting up our operators. So the first part of creating SFDC operators within Nav is to create an operator dimension. So I'm just going to go into the dimensions card. And as you can see, as I am doing these demonstrations, I do already have this set up, but this is the format it should take. So you want to have an operator code, which will then feed into the name, code caption and fields caption. As I'm only using dimensions in a basic way in this setup, I'm not going to create any further setup within this screen, but you want to set them up in much the same way that you would another dimension. So now the operator dimensions being set up, we now need to give values to the operator dimensions. So I'm just going to go back to the SFDC setup screen. And as you can see in the ribbon, I have the operator dimensions action. So I do already have 4 operator dimensions completed. Just a reminder, you can have up to 4 dimensions here, or as few as 1, but you do need at least 1. If you do wish to use these as part of your reporting and posting, you will need to tick the post operator dimensions within the operators fast tab. And this will provide the same level of reporting for SFDC operators as you would any other dimension. Now we need to create the SFDC operators themselves. So these are users that will be using SFDC and they do not require their own nav license. So I'm going to navigate to the SFDC operator screen. As you can see here, I do already have quite a lot of operators set up, but I'm just going to set myself up as an operator. So in code, you just want to continue the same pattern, so I'm just going to put OP21. In name, if you want to leave it as generic as a number, you can, but I'm just going to enter my name. In units of measure, we're just going to put minutes to match the others, and now I'm going to put a unit cost. So the unit of measure and unit cost will calculate together to provide a cost, so how much I'm costing to complete a production order on a device. So you can leave this blank if you wish, but I've just filled mine in. So I'm just going to select OK. So now I'm back on my SFDC screens. I'm just going to select a production order line. So I'm just going to select this first one. And then you can see I've now appeared as an operator. So I'm able to select myself and next. And you can see that I'm now able to complete production orders. In the last part of this video, we're going to be looking at Machine Center setup. So I'm just going to navigate to the Machine Centers list. So as you can see, I already have all mine set up. So I'm just going to go into Machine Center 130. And the first field I'm going to touch on, or the first fast tab rather, is the posting fast tab. So here you can see we have direct unit cost, indirect cost, overhead rate and unit cost. So if you wish to set up costs as part of your capacity posting, this is where you would need to complete them. The direct unit cost field should be filled with the cost of one unit of measure. So in my example, I use minutes. So if I was to put 10p in here, that would mean that per minute my machine costs 10p. If you also wish to include overhead and indirect costs, you should fill those in, and this will also affect the end unit cost, which you can see updates. Next, you can see that we also have a new fast tab created as part of the SFDC install, which is this one at the bottom. So any changes you make here will override the setup within the SFDC setup. Remember, that's the default. This is more specific. The most important field here is to the Show in SFDC tick. If this is left blank, this machine center will not be available within SFDC, so remember to always tick that. Next, we have the Production Order Presentation field. Selecting Prompt will allow operators to select from all available production orders for this machine center. In this example, I'm going to select Automatic. An automatic will just give me the next production order in the queue. So process type. So here we have single line and all lines. So if you select single line, as I have, it means that each production line for this machine center will need to be selected in isolation, with the machine center then stopped and started again for each order. So that's just going to be a typical normal production order. Conversely, if you want to have all lines selected, multiple production orders can be worked on at once. If you do choose to select all lines, at that point you can then select the Consolidate Components field. This will change the component screen by retrieving the components for all production orders being worked on, but will only show the unique item variant code once. So because I have quite basic data within this setup, but you can see that you are able to get more detail in SFDC. Next, if you have chosen to allow multiple operators within the SFDC setup, as we discussed in the previous video, you can choose to confirm operator on output. So if there are more than one operator working on a production order, when they choose to output on that production order, they will be asked to choose which operator has worked on this. So again, I'm going to tick this to show you what this will do. Next, we have the Show Production Order from Work Center. So if this is left as default, it will just match whatever you've set up within the SFDC setup screen. However, if you select yes, that means that you do want to show production orders from the work center, not just the machine center. And if you select no, then that means that you can only see production orders assigned to this specific machine centre. The final tick box we have is use production groups. So if you are using production groups as part of your setup, that's where you can select that. So now, as you can see, I'm back in my SFDC screen, and it might look a little bit different to normal. So the background's blue, our status is blank, and as you can see, we also don't have an operator. So because I chose to load operations on this machine centre automatically, this is the next available operation. So there you can see the order number. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to start, select my operator number, which is myself, and then you can see we've gone to a running state. See if you can remember, the next field that I ticked was the confirm operator on output. So I'm going to add a second operator. I'm going to add operator 20. In output quantity, I'm just going to put 1. Then I'm going to select output. And as you can see, due to that tick box, I now have to confirm which operator I am. So I'm just going to select Megan Hill. If I hadn't selected that tick box, the output would have just posted. I wouldn't have had to choose which operator. So those are all the changes that I made as part of the machine centre setup. And as we've seen throughout this video, you're able to make devices as specific or as general as you want. If you wish to learn more about the SFDC output screen, please watch the next video.